The wrench slipped from Calder Ross's oil-stained fingers and clanged against the concrete floor of his garage. He wiped his hands on his coveralls and glanced at the clock mounted above his workbench. 3:30. Wyatt would be home from school soon. Outside, the August heat pressed down on Austin like a heavy blanket. The thermometer on his garage wall read 98 degrees. Even with both bay doors open and 3 industrial fans running, the air barely moved. The delivery truck's brakes squealed outside, followed by the metallic slam of a door. Calder stepped into the heat, squinting against the afternoon sun that reflected off every surface like broken glass. The courier, a kid who couldn't be older than 20, held a package wrapped in cheerful birthday paper. Red ribbons and gold stars, the kind of wrapping you'd see at a child's party. Calder Ross, that's me, birthday delivery. Need you to sign here. The kid held out an electronic pad, sweat already beading on his forehead despite being outside for less than 30 seconds. Calder scrawled his name across the screen with a plastic stylus that felt sticky in the heat. The box felt heavier than it looked, about the size of a shoebox, but with more weight concentrated in the center. Like something dense was packed inside. The return address showed Nadine's company logo printed in neat corporate letters. Dad, Wyatt stood at the edge of the driveway, his backpack slung over one shoulder. The 10-year-old's dark hair stuck up in the back where he'd been sleeping against the school bus window. His face was flushed from the heat, but his eyes were alert and focused on the package in Calder's hands. Hey, kiddo. How was school? Fine. Wyatt dropped his backpack and walked closer, his sneakers crunching on the gravel driveway. What's that? Birthday present from your mom. Wyatt stopped walking, his face scrunched up like he'd caught a whiff of something rotten. Don't open it. Calder felt his eyebrows rise. In all his years of military service, he'd learned to trust instincts, especially when they came from unexpected sources. Children often notice things adults missed, details that didn't fit the pattern. Why not? Something's wrong. It's humming. The kid had sharp ears. Too sharp sometimes. Calder held the box up to his ear, pressing it gently against the cheerful wrapping paper. Under the festive exterior, a faint mechanical buzz vibrated against his palm. Not quite a hum, more like a soft ticking. Rhythmic. Electronic. Probably just a music box or something electronic, Calder said, but his military training kicked in automatically. Never assume. Always verify. Test every assumption before it gets you killed. He carried the box into his garage, past the half-assembled transmission he'd been rebuilding and the tool bench where he'd spent countless hours fixing the mechanical problems other shops gave up on. The familiar smell of motor oil and metal shavings provided an odd comfort as he approached his steel tool locker. The locker was military surplus, thick enough to stop small arms fire and heavy enough to contain explosion. He set the package inside and turned the combination lock. The thick metal would contain anything nasty, and the lock would keep Wyatt away from whatever was inside. We'll look at it later, he told his son, watching relief wash over the boy's face. After dinner. Wyatt nodded but kept glancing toward the locker, like he expected it to start making noise. Nadine had been gone 3 days on another one of her weekend work retreats. Business development, she called it. Team building exercises at some resort outside San Antonio. She'd been taking these trips every few weeks for the past 6 months, always coming back refreshed and distant, like she'd left part of herself at the spa. Is Mom coming home tonight? Wyatt asked, settling into his usual spot on the garage's old couch. He liked to watch Calder work, asking questions about engines and tools and why things broke. Tomorrow morning. She said she'd make pancakes. Wyatt's face brightened. Nadine might be distant lately, but she still made the best pancakes in Travis County. Thick and fluffy with real butter and maple syrup, not the artificial stuff most people used. They ate leftover pizza for dinner while watching a documentary about sharks. Wyatt fell asleep on the couch around 8, his small body curled up under the blanket Nadine had crocheted when he was a baby. Calder carried him to bed, noting how the boy was getting heavy. 10 years old and already showing signs of the Ross family height. After Wyatt was settled, Calder returned to the garage. The package sat in his tool locker like a sleeping animal, innocent and potentially dangerous at the same time. The rational part of his mind said he was being paranoid. The part that had kept him alive in Afghanistan said trust your instincts, especially when a child's instincts agreed with yours. He pulled out his phone and started recording, then set up his small GoPro camera on the workbench. The device had been a gift from Stick, his best mechanic, who used it to record complex repairs for training purposes. If something went wrong with the package, at least there would be evidence. Calder used his thinnest pry bar to carefully lift one edge of the wrapping paper, working slowly and methodically. The adhesive gave way with a soft ripping sound that seemed too loud in the quiet garage. Underneath the cheerful paper, a plain cardboard box, the kind used for shipping small electronics or jewelry, that he worked like he was defusing an IED, each movement deliberate and controlled. Paper came away in strips, revealing more of the anonymous brown cardboard beneath. The box itself was unmarked except for a small shipping label with his address printed in standard courier font. The ticking sound was clearer now, more distinct. Definitely electronic. A timer, maybe, or a small motor. The sound had a quality that reminded him of cheap digital watches, the kind sold at gas stations. He used needle-nose pliers to lift the box lid, keeping his face turned away in case of chemical release or small explosive. Inside, nestled in white tissue paper like a precious gift, sat a single cupcake with pink frosting and rainbow sprinkles. Next to it, a small folded note written on cream-colored stationery. Calder picked up the note with the pliers and unfolded it carefully. Nadine's handwriting, neat and careful in black ink. To a fresh start. And he examined the cupcake without touching it, looking for obvious signs of tampering. Chocolate cake base, vanilla frosting, nothing obviously wrong with it. The smell was normal sugar and cocoa and artificial vanilla, the kind of scent that usually made his mouth water. Today, it made his stomach turn. The ticking continued, a steady rhythm that seemed to match his heartbeat. He turned the box over and found the source, a small black device about the size of a matchbox, attached to the bottom with industrial adhesive. The kind of GPS tracker used by private investigators or suspicious spouses. Calder stared at the device for a long moment, his mind processing the implications. Someone wanted to know where this box went, where he went. The tracker meant this wasn't a simple gift or even a simple attempt at poisoning. This was part of a larger plan. He photographed everything from multiple angles, documenting the cupcake, the note, the tracker. Then he sealed the cupcake in a plastic evidence bag he'd kept from his military days and placed it in his refrigerator's freezer, nestled between frozen vegetables and ice cream. The GPS tracker went into a lead-lined box he used for storing sensitive electronics, the kind of container that blocked all radio signals. If someone was monitoring the tracker, they'd think it had simply stopped working. The note he photographed from every angle, then burned in his metal wastebasket, watching Nadine's careful handwriting curl and blacken in the flames. The next morning, Calder woke to the sound of birds outside his bedroom window and the distant hum of traffic on I-35. For a moment, everything felt normal. Then he remembered the cupcake in his freezer, and the reality crashed back that he dressed quietly, not wanting to wake Wyatt, and went downstairs to the kitchen. Buster, their aging German shepherd, followed him down the stairs with the careful movements of a dog whose hips ached in the morning. Calder retrieved the frozen cupcake from the freezer and unwrapped it. The frosting had crystallized slightly, but the smell was still sweet and artificial. He held it out for Buster to sniff. The dog's reaction was immediate and violent. Buster backed away like he'd been slapped, whimpering and pressing himself against the far wall. The hair on his neck stood up, and his ears flattened against his skull. Buster had eaten garbage, dead fish, and once an entire chocolate cake that fell off the counter during Wyatt's 7th birthday party. Nothing scared him except fireworks, the vacuum cleaner, and apparently whatever was in this cupcake. Easy boy. Calder rewrapped the cupcake and put it back in the freezer. Good boy. Smart boy. Buster's reaction confirmed what his instincts had been telling him. Something was very wrong with his birthday gift. Nadine's car pulled into the driveway at 10:30. The engine of her blue Honda making the slight knocking sound he'd been meaning to fix for months. Calder watched through the kitchen window as she gathered her overnight bag and walked to the front door. She looked good rested, relaxed, wearing a yellow sundress he hadn't seen before. The dress was expensive looking, not the kind of thing she usually bought for herself. "Morning, honey." She kissed his cheek, her lips warm and soft, carrying the faint scent of unfamiliar perfume. "Miss me?" "Always do." He studied her face, looking for signs of deception. Same green eyes, same smile, same freckles across her nose that had attracted him 15 years ago. "How was the retreat?" "Boring team building stuff. Trust exercises and role-playing." She set her bag down and looked around the kitchen with the air of someone returning to familiar territory. "You know how these corporate things are." "Where's Wyatt?" "Next door, playing with the Peterson kids. He'll be back soon." "Good. I promised him pancakes." She moved around the kitchen with easy familiarity, pulling out mixing bowls and flour, measuring ingredients with the precision of someone who'd made the same recipe hundreds of times. Like nothing had changed. Like she wasn't tracking his movements with hidden GPS devices. "Oh, I almost forgot." She glanced over her shoulder while cracking eggs into a bowl. "Did you get my present?" "I did. Thank you. Did you like it?" The question hung in the air between them. Calder met her eyes, searching for any hint of the truth behind the casual inquiry. "Haven't opened it yet. Saving it for later." Something flickered across her face, too quick to read. Disappointment? Concern? Fear? "It's just a cupcake. Nothing fancy. I'm sure it's delicious." "Well, don't wait too long. These things don't keep forever." Wyatt burst through the back door like a small tornado, grass stains on his knees and dirt under his fingernails. "Mom, you're back." Nadine scooped him up in a hug, spinning him around the kitchen. "Hey, baby, ready for pancakes?" Always ready for pancakes. While Nadine cooked, Calder sat at the kitchen table and watched her work. She hummed while she stirred the batter, the same tune she'd hummed when they were dating 15 years ago. Her movements were precise, measured, economical. She always made exactly 12 pancakes for him, for her, for Wyatt. Today, she made 8. "Not hungry?" Calder asked. "Ate a big breakfast at the hotel." She flipped a pancake with practiced ease, the golden surface perfect and evenly browned. "These are for you boys." Wyatt chattered about school and his friends while they ate, his mouth full of pancake and syrup. Nadine listened and smiled and asked the right questions. A perfect mother, a perfect wife. The kind of woman neighbors would describe as devoted and caring. After breakfast, she went upstairs to unpack. Calder found an excuse to follow her, climbing the stairs he'd rebuilt himself when they'd bought the house 8 years ago. "Nadine." She looked up from her suitcase, clothes folded with military precision. "Yeah." Wyatt said something strange yesterday. Said you told him I was going to feel better soon, and then everything would change. Her hand stilled for just a moment, a pause so brief he might have imagined it. Then she continued unpacking, her movements quick and efficient. "I don't remember saying that." He seemed pretty sure about it. Kids misunderstand things. She shook out a blouse and hung it in the closet. "Maybe I said you've been working too hard lately." "You have been tired." He had been tired. Bone-deep exhaustion that hit him like a truck some afternoons. And losing weight, though he'd attributed that to stress and long hours at the garage. Some mornings he felt like he was moving through fog, his thoughts slow and disconnected. "Maybe you should see a doctor," Nadine suggested, her voice carrying the tone of a concerned wife. "Get checkup. Make sure everything's okay." "Maybe I will. I worry about you, Calder. You work so hard, and you never take care of yourself." The concern in her voice sounded genuine. If he hadn't found the GPS tracker, hadn't seen Buster's reaction to the cupcake, he might have believed her. That afternoon, Calder drove to Austin General Hospital through traffic that moved like cold honey. Lana Briggs was working a double shift in the emergency department, her third one this week. They'd known each other since high school, stayed friends through his military service and her nursing school and the complicated years that followed. She was one of the few people he trusted completely. "Calder? What are you doing here?" Lana looked up from a chart she was updating, her scrubs wrinkled from a long shift. "Please tell me you're not hurt. Need a favor. Professional favor." She gestured toward an empty examination room, past the noise and controlled chaos of the emergency department. "Talk." Calder pulled the frozen cupcake from a cooler bag, still wrapped in its evidence bag. "Can you test this? See what's in it?" Lana took the bag, and held it up to the fluorescent light. Looks like a cupcake. I need to know if there's anything else in it. Anything that shouldn't be there. Calder, what's going on? Call it paranoia. Call a hunch. Just need to know. Lana studied his face with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen every kind of human misery. This have something to do with your wife? I hope not. But you think it does. I think someone wants me dead. The words hung in the air between them. Lana set the bag down on the examination table and crossed her arms. Okay, I'll run it through the lab. Should have results in a day or two. Thanks, Lana. I owe you. You don't owe me anything. But if someone's trying to hurt you, you need to be careful. I will be. And Calder? If this is what I think it is, you need to consider the possibility that your wife isn't who you think she is. Driving home through the late afternoon heat, Calder thought about Wyatt's words. Dad's going to feel better soon. Then everything will change. What kind of change? And why would he feel better? Unless he was sick. Unless something was making him sick. Unless someone was making him sick. The call came 2 days later while Calder was rebuilding a transmission for Mrs. Henderson's 2015 Ford Explorer. His hands were covered in transmission fluid when his phone buzzed against the metal workbench. Calder, it's Lana. Can you talk? Something in her voice made him set down his tools immediately. Yeah, what did you find? You need to sit down. Just tell me. That frosting tested positive for cyanide. Not enough to kill you outright, but enough to make you very sick. Very sick. The garage seemed to tilt sideways. Calder gripped the edge of his workbench, his knuckles white against the scarred metal surface. The familiar sounds of the garage, the hum of the air compressor, the distant noise of traffic faded into background static. You sure? I ran it 3 times. Different samples, different tests. I'm sure. Cyanide. Someone had tried to poison him. Someone had sent him a cupcake laced with cyanide on his birthday, wrapped it in cheerful paper with gold stars and red ribbons. Nadine. Calder? You still there? Yeah, I'm here. You need to call the police. Right now. Not yet. I need to think. Don't think too long. If someone's trying to poison you, I'll be careful. Thanks, Lana. Calder, promise me you won't eat or drink anything she gives you. I promise. He ended the call and stood in his garage, surrounded by the familiar smell of motor oil and metal shavings and the lingering scent of coffee from his morning cup. Nothing felt familiar anymore. The woman he'd married, the mother of his son, had tried to kill him. He thought back over the past 6 months with new eyes. The fatigue that hit him like a physical blow some afternoons, leaving him barely able to stand. The weight loss Nadine had praised as him getting back in shape, buying him new clothes when his old ones hung loose. The random nausea that came and went without explanation, always worse after meals Nadine had prepared. The strange metallic taste in his mouth some mornings, like he'd been sucking on pennies he'd blamed stress. Work. Getting older. The natural consequences of running his own business and raising a son that he'd been wrong. Calder pulled out his phone and called Dr. Reeves at the VA hospital. The receptionist tried to schedule him for next week, but he pushed. I need blood work done. Full panel. Today if possible. Mr. Ross? Is everything all right? Just need to check something. Can you fit me in? Come in at 4. I'll have a lab draw blood. The blood draw took 5 minutes in a sterile room that smelled like antiseptic and fear. Dr. Reeves asked questions Calder deflected with practiced ease. Just being cautious. Too many years of ignoring symptoms. Any particular symptoms you're concerned about? Fatigue. Weight loss. Nausea. How long have you been experiencing these? 6 months, maybe longer. Dr. Reeves made notes in Calder's file. Results should be back tomorrow afternoon. Can you rush them? I'll see what I can do. The results would take 24 hours. 24 hours to confirm what he already knew. Driving home through Austin's rush hour traffic, Calder felt the pieces clicking into place like parts of an engine finally fitting together properly. Nadine's weekend trips that started 6 months ago. Her emotional distance, like she was gradually detaching herself from their marriage. Her insistence that he eat the meal she prepared, drink the tea she made him every night before bed. The GPS tracker meant she wanted to know where he'd taken a box. Probably expected him to throw it away or eat the cupcake and dispose of the evidence himself. She wanted to know when he died. Calder parked in his driveway and sat for a moment, watching his house through the windshield. Warm light glowed in the kitchen window where Nadine was making dinner. The same window where he'd watched her prepare hundreds of meals over the years. The same kitchen where they'd shared coffee in the mornings and planned their future together. Wyatt was probably doing homework at the kitchen table, his books spread out in the organized chaos that marked all his school projects. Normal. Peaceful. A complete lie. He walked through the front door like nothing had changed, like he hadn't just learned his wife was slowly murdering him. "Hey, honey, how was your day?" Nadine looked up from the stove, smiling the same smile that had made him fall in love with her 15 years ago. "Good. Busy." He kissed her cheek and felt her relax against him, her body warm and familiar. "Smells great. What are we having?" "Beef stew. Your favorite." She made beef stew at least once a week for the past month. Always insisted he have seconds. Always watched him eat with that satisfied smile, like a cook pleased with her creation. "Can't wait," he said. During dinner, he ate carefully, tasting each bite before swallowing. The stew tasted normal, beef and vegetables, and the perfect blend of seasonings Nadine had perfected over years of cooking. But then, cyanide was supposed to be hard to detect in food. That's what made it so effective. "Dad, you're eating weird," Wyatt observed, his spoon halfway to his mouth. "Just savoring it. Mom's a great cook." Nadine beamed at the compliment. "Thank you, honey. I try." After dinner, Nadine made his nightly tea like she had every evening for the past 2 years. Earl Grey with honey, the way he'd learned to like it during his deployment. She set the ceramic mug in front of him with a gentle touch on his shoulder, the kind of casual affection that marked a comfortable marriage. "Drink up. You look tired." The tea was more bitter than usual, with an undertaste that made his tongue tingle. Calder raised the mug to his lips and pretended to sip, letting the hot liquid touch his mouth without swallowing. "Thanks. Think I'll take this upstairs, maybe read for a while." "Good idea. You've been working too hard." In their bathroom, he poured the tea down the sink and ran hot water to wash away any residue. Then he rinsed the mug thoroughly and dried it with a clean towel in their bedroom. He pretended to read a military thriller while Nadine got ready for bed. She brushed her teeth and washed her face and applied the night cream she'd used for as long as he'd known her. Normal routines, normal movements, normal behavior. Nadine came to bed an hour later. She moved quietly, thinking he was asleep. He watched through barely open eyes as she checked the empty mug on his nightstand, noted it was empty, and smiled to herself, a satisfied smile. The smile of someone whose plan was working perfectly. The next morning, while Nadine took Wyatt to school, Calder went through her things with the systematic thoroughness he'd learned in the Army. He started with obvious places: her purse, her dresser drawers, the small jewelry box where she kept her earrings. Her laptop was password protected, but he knew her passwords. She used the same 3 variations for everything: their wedding date, Wyatt's birthday, and their old address in San Antonio. Her browser history showed nothing interesting. Shopping sites, news articles, social media. Her email was equally clean: messages from work, spam, the usual digital clutter of modern life. But she had a second phone that he found in a shoebox at the back of her closet, buried under old sweaters that smelled like mothballs. A cheap prepaid phone with a handful of contacts. One number appeared repeatedly in the call log, sometimes for hours at a time. Calder memorized the number and put the phone back exactly where he'd found it, making sure the sweaters fell in the same pattern. Atia's garage. He used the landline to call the number. The phone rang 3 times before a man answered. Decker Sloan Construction. Calder hung up without speaking. Decker Sloan, the contractor who'd built their patio last summer. A big man with calloused hands and an easy smile who'd spent 6 weeks in their backyard, laying stone and building the outdoor kitchen Nadine had wanted for years. He'd flirted with her while Calder was at work, or so Mrs. Peterson had mentioned casually one evening. Calder had thought it was harmless. He'd been wrong about that too, Doctor. Reeves called that afternoon while Calder was trying to focus on installing a new clutch in a Honda Civic. "Calder, I need you to come in. Today. Just tell me over the phone. This isn't something we discuss over the phone." "Doc, I can handle whatever you found." A long pause. "Your blood shows signs of chronic cyanide poisoning. Low level, consistent exposure over several months." Where the hell had you been exposed to cyanide? The words hit him like a physical blow, even though he'd been expecting them. I'll explain when I see you. At the VA hospital, Dr. Reeves ran more tests. Blood panels, urine samples, complete physical examination. The results painted a picture of systematic poisoning. You're lucky to be alive, Dr. Reeves said, studying the printouts. A little more exposure, and you'd have been looking at organ failure, cardiac arrest. How long have I been poisoned? Based on the levels I'm seeing, at least 6 months. Maybe longer. 6 months. Right around the time Nadine started her weekend retreats. Doc, I need you to document everything. Blood levels, timeline, symptoms. And I need copies of all the records. Calder, who did this to you? Someone who wanted me dead. Someone who's been planning this for a long time. That evening, Calder sat in his truck outside Decker Sloan's office, a converted warehouse in East Austin where gentrification was slowly pushing out the auto repair shops and taco stands. At 6:30, Decker came out carrying a leather tool bag and climbed into a new Ford F-250. Calder followed him through surface streets to a bar downtown, staying far enough back to avoid detection. The bar was dim and crowded, the kind of place where construction workers went to drink beer and complain about their bosses. Calder found a corner table with a clear view of Decker's booth and ordered a Coke he didn't plan to drink. At 7:15, Nadine walked in. She looked different away from their house. Younger somehow, more alive than she'd seemed in months. She'd changed clothes since dinner, trading her conservative blouse for a low-cut dress that hugged her figure. She slid into the booth across from Decker and kissed him over the table. Not a friendly kiss. A lover's kiss, deep and desperate and full of promise. Calder's hands clenched into fists. He forced himself to stay seated, to watch and listen and gather evidence. They talked for an hour, their heads close together over drinks that went mostly untouched. Calder couldn't hear their conversation, but their body language told the story. Intimate touches, shared secrets, the easy familiarity of two people who'd been together for months. When they left, they went to Decker's truck together. Calder followed them through Austin's sprawling suburbs to a rental cabin outside the city limits, hidden among oak trees and accessible only by a gravel road that wound through darkness. Through the uncurtained windows, he watched them disappear into the bedroom. His wife of 12 years, the mother of his son, the woman who made him tea every night and kissed him goodbye every morning. She wanted him dead so she could be with another man. The next 3 days were the hardest of Calder's life. He went through the motions of normal life while building a case against his wife with the methodical precision of a military operation. He installed spy software on her phone while she showered, using skills he'd learned from a computer tech in his unit. The app cloned her text messages and call logs to his device in real time, creating a digital trail of evidence. The messages between Nadine and Decker painted a clear picture of conspiracy and murder. Nadine. He started to look like a ghost. Poor thing. Decker. How much longer? Nadine. Not much. Maybe another week or two. The doses have to be small or someone might notice. Decker. When the life insurance clears, I want us on a beach in 30 days. Nadine. Mexico sounds perfect. Just you and me and all that money. Decker. What about the kid? Nadine. He'll be fine with his grandparents. Kids are resilient. The life insurance policy was for $500,000. Calder was the insured, Nadine the sole beneficiary. He'd signed the papers 3 years ago when Wyatt was born, never thinking twice about it. Life insurance was what responsible fathers did. More digging through their home office revealed forged power of attorney documents hidden in their safe. The notary stamp looked official, but Calder had never signed them. The signature was close, but not perfect, missing the slight curl on the R that marked his real signature. Nadine had been planning to control his finances, his medical decisions, everything. She could have moved him to a facility, claimed he was mentally incompetent, and let him die slowly while she drained their accounts. The cupcake hadn't been meant to kill him quickly. It was meant to finish him after months of smaller doses had weakened his system. One final, large dose to stop his heart after the chronic poisoning had done most of the work. She could have claimed he died of natural causes. A heart attack brought on by stress and poor health. The insurance company would have paid out without question, and she'd have been the grieving widow who deserved everyone's sympathy. It was a perfect plan. Almost on Friday, Calder drove to the Austin Police Department, a modern building that looked more like a corporate office than a fortress of justice. Detective Jory Harlan was a 20-year veteran with suspicious eyes and no tolerance for bullshit. They'd met 2 years earlier when someone had been using Calder's garage to store stolen car parts. "Ross, what brings you by? Need to talk." Privately. Harlan's office was small and cluttered, filled with case files and empty coffee cups, and the accumulated debris of 2 decades of police work. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. "What's on your mind?" Calder laid out everything methodically. The cupcake with its hidden GPS tracker. The lab results showing cyanide in the frosting. His own blood tests revealing chronic poisoning. The text messages between Nadine and Decker. The forged documents and the life insurance policy. Harlan listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. When Calder finished, the detective leaned back in his chair. "This is a hell of a story, Ross. You got evidence." "Some. Working on getting more." "How much more time do you need?" "Give me 1 more week." "A week? Your wife is trying to kill you, and you want to wait a week." "I want her in prison for the rest of her life." "That means building an airtight case. No reasonable doubt. No plea bargains. No early parole." Harlan studied him for a long moment. "You're not going to do anything stupid, are you?" "Define stupid." "You know what I mean. Vigilante justice. Taking matters into your own hands." "I'm not going to hurt her. I'm going to bury her. Because if you kill her, even in self-defense, you'll be the one going to prison." "I understand. And your son will be an orphan. Which is why I'm doing this the right way." Harlan nodded slowly. 1 week. Then we move, ready or not." Calder spent the weekend pretending to get sicker, carefully staging his decline like a theater performance. He stumbled going up the stairs Saturday morning, gripping the banister for support and breathing hard. "Whoa." Head rush. Nadine was beside him instantly, all concern and gentle touches. Her hands were warm on his arm, steadying him with the practiced care of a devoted wife. "Maybe you should rest today." "I'm fine. Just tired." But he let her help him to their bedroom, let her tuck him under the covers like he was an invalid. She fluffed his pillows and brought him water and asked if he needed anything else. "I'll bring you some tea," she said. The tea was more bitter than usual, with a metallic aftertaste that made his mouth go numb. When she left the room, he poured it into the potted plant by their window. The plant had been dying for weeks, its leaves turning brown and falling off. Now he knew why. Sunday afternoon, he called his garage foreman and canceled Monday's appointments. Feeling under the weather. Might be the flu. When he hung up, Nadine was standing in the doorway, watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Poor baby. You do look pale. Just need some rest." "Of course. I'll take care of everything." That night, she was more affectionate than she'd been in months. She curled up against him in bed, her head on his chest, her hair smelling like the expensive shampoo she'd started using recently. "I love you," she whispered in the dark. "Love you too," he whispered back. It was the last lie he would ever tell her. Monday morning, Calder met with Stick Martinez at a diner on the east side of town. They sat in a corner booth where no one could overhear their conversation. "Boss, you look like hell." "Feel worse." "Need a favor, Stick?" "Name it." Calder handed him a small surveillance camera, the kind used for home security. "Need you to install this in my house. Living room, kitchen, wherever Nadine spends time. You spying on your wife. She's trying to kill me." Stick's eyes went wide. "What?" "Long story." "Can you do it?" "Hell yes, I can do it." "When?" "Today. While she's at work and Wyatt's at school." "Consider it done, boss." While Stick worked on the surveillance system, Calder visited Lana at the hospital. She was between patients, catching up on paperwork in the break room. "You look terrible," she said without looking up from her charts. "Are you still being poisoned?" "Working on stopping that." "Need another favor." "What now?" "I need you to document my recovery. Blood tests every few days. Create a medical timeline." "Recovery from what?" "Chronic cyanide poisoning." Lana set down her pen and stared at him. "Jesus, Calder. How long has this been going on?" 6 months, give or take." "Your wife." "My wife. You need to leave her. Tonight." "Can't do that." "I leave. She gets custody of Wyatt. I'm not letting her raise my son. So what's your plan? Send her to prison where she belongs. Friday afternoon. Calder told Nadine he had a VA appointment in San Antonio. An overnight stay for some tests related to his service-connected disabilities. Nothing serious, I hope. She tried to look worried, but he caught the flash of excitement in her eyes, quickly suppressed. Routine stuff. They want to do some scans, check my blood levels. Back tomorrow evening. He packed a bag with the same care he'd once used for military operations. Clean clothes, toiletries, his medication. Everything a man would need for an overnight hospital stay. He kissed her goodbye at the front door, noting how she leaned into the kiss with unusual enthusiasm. Take care of Wyatt. Always do. Drive safely. Instead of driving to San Antonio, Calder went to a motel 15 minutes away. He checked in under a false name, paying cash for a room that smelled like disinfectant and old cigarettes. The bedspread was faded and the carpet was worn, but it had high-speed internet and a clear view of the parking lot. He settled in to watch the surveillance feeds from his house on his laptop. The camera stick had installed provided multiple angles of the living room, kitchen, and front entrance. Audio was crystal cleared. At T6:30, Nadine put Wyatt to bed early, claiming he looked tired from a long week at school. At 7, she sent a text message. Coast is clear. Decker arrived 20 minutes later in his Ford pickup. Calder watched on his laptop as they embraced in his living room, as Decker spun Nadine around like newlyweds celebrating their honeymoon. They looked happy, relieved, like people whose long-term plan was finally coming together. Once he's gone, we sell everything, Decker said, loud enough for the hidden microphones to pick up clearly. You fly to Mexico first. I'll follow in a few weeks. Make it look like I'm just taking a vacation. What about the boy? Nadine asked. What about him? He'll ask questions. Wonder where I went. Decker shrugged, his massive shoulders rolling under his work shirt. Kids get over things, especially when they're living with their grandparents and getting spoiled. Calder's jaw clenched. They were planning to abandon Wyatt, leave him orphaned and confused while they spent his father's life insurance money on beaches in Mexico. We could make it look like he had an accident at the shop, Decker continued. Equipment failure. Happens all the time in those places. Too risky. The current plan is working perfectly. How much longer? A few more days. Maybe a week. He's getting weaker every day. Good. I'm tired of waiting. It'll be worth it. $500,000 is a lot of money. Enough to disappear forever. Calder saved the recording and uploaded it to a secure cloud server, the same one he used to back up his business files. Then he called Detective Harlan. It's time, he said. Saturday night, Calder returned home through the same front door he'd walked through thousands of times. The house was quiet except for the gentle hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of Wyatt's white noise machine. Nadine was in the kitchen, hunched over her phone like a teenager, hiding secrets from her parents. The screen's blue glow illuminated her face as her fingers moved quickly across the virtual keyboard. How did the tests go? She asked without looking up. Fine. Doctor says I'm improving. She glanced at him sharply, her fingers frozen over the phone. Improving. Blood work came back better than expected. Said whatever was making me sick seems to be clearing up. That's good news. But her face said otherwise. The color drained from her cheeks, and her hands trembled slightly as she set the phone down. Did they say what was causing it? Some kind of toxin exposure. Could be anything, chemicals at work, something in the environment. They want to run more tests. Nadine's smile looked forced. Well, I'm glad you're feeling better. That night, she made his tea stronger than usual. The bitter smell made his eyes water, and the liquid had an oily consistency that clung to the sides of the mug. Drink up, she said, watching him carefully. You look tired. He pretended to sip it, letting the tea touch his lips without allowing any to enter his mouth. Thanks. Think I'll take this upstairs. In the bathroom, he poured the tea into a glass vial he'd gotten from Lana. Evidence for the lab to analyze. The liquid was darker than usual, almost brown instead of the normal amber color of Earl Grey. He was back downstairs getting a glass of water when the kitchen window exploded inward in a shower of glass and twisted metal. Decker Sloan stood in the doorway, holding a crowbar that looked like a toy in his massive hands. His eyes were wild, desperate, the eyes of a man whose careful plan was falling apart. "Where is she?" he demanded. "Upstairs. Asleep. This is taking too long. We need to finish this tonight." Calder stayed calm, his military training taking over automatically. Assess the threat. Plan your response. Execute with precision. Finish what? You know what? Decker raised the crowbar above his head. "You should have died weeks ago. Sorry to disappoint you." Nadine said the doses were working. Said you were getting sicker. Maybe she was wrong. Decker swung the crowbar at Calder's head in a vicious arc that would have caved in his skull. Calder ducked under the swing and drove his shoulder into Decker's midsection, using the bigger man's momentum against him. They crashed into the kitchen table, sending chairs flying in all directions. Decker was stronger, but Calder was faster and better trained. He got behind Decker and applied a sleeper hold, cutting off blood flow to the brain until the big man went limp. Cable ties from his toolbox secured Decker's hands and feet. Calder dragged him to the garage and zip-tied him to a steel support beam, positioning him where the surveillance cameras would capture everything. Decker came around 10 minutes later, thrashing against his restraints like a trapped animal. "You can't do this. Watch me." "Nadine!" Decker screamed toward the house. "Nadine, help me." But Nadine was still upstairs, probably wondering why her husband hadn't died yet. Calder called Detective Harlan at midnight, waking him from what sounded like a deep sleep. "Ross, this better be good. It's over. Come my house. Bring backup." "What happened?" "I caught them." Harlan arrived with 2 patrol units and a crime scene team that looked like they'd been roused from bed. Calder met them in his driveway with a banker's box full of evidence organized with military precision. "Blood work showing chronic cyanide poisoning," he said, handing over the medical files. "Cupcake tested positive for cyanide. Surveillance video of the defendants planning my murder. GPS tracker used to monitor my movements. Forged power of attorney documents. Tonight's T sample for analysis. And the attempted murderer zip-tied in my garage." Harlan whistled low. "Damn, Ross. You don't do anything halfway. Thorough documentation prevents appeals." They arrested Decker first. He was still tied to the support beam, screaming about police brutality and illegal detention. The officers read him his rights while he struggled against the cable ties. Nadine was harder. She woke up when the police cars arrived, came downstairs in her robe, looking confused and innocent. The perfect picture of a wife concerned about her husband's welfare. "Officers? What's going on? Is my husband all right?" "Ma'am, you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy, insurance fraud, and forgery." She looked at Calder like he'd slapped her across the face. "Calder? What is this? What's happening?" "It's over, Nadine. I don't understand. We're married. We have a son. You try to poison me." Her mask finally slipped. The confusion disappeared, replaced by cold calculation and pure hatred. "You can't prove anything. I can prove everything." As the officers read her rights, Nadine's eyes never left Calder's face. The love he'd seen there for 15 years was gone, replaced by something dark and vicious. "You bastard," she said quietly. "You self-righteous bastard. Takes one to know one." The trial took 3 months to prepare. Decker Sloan folded the moment his court-appointed lawyer saw the evidence. He took a plea deal and agreed to testify against Nadine in exchange for 25 years instead of life without parole. "She planned everything," he told the court, his voice barely above a whisper. "Said her husband was getting suspicious, that we needed to speed things up. I just wanted to be with her." "Did Mrs. Ross know you were planning to break in her house that night?" the prosecutor asked. "No, that was my idea. I thought we could make it look like a burglary gone wrong. But the original plan was to poison Mr. Ross slowly." "Yes." She said it had to look natural, like he was just getting sick. Nadine's defense attorney tried to paint her as a victim of abuse, a battered wife driven to desperate measures. But the evidence was overwhelming. The text messages showing her enjoyment of Calder's suffering. The forged documents. The insurance money she'd already started spending that on the final day of testimony. Nadine took the stand in her own defense, wearing a conservative dress that made her look younger and more vulnerable. My husband was controlling, she said, tears streaming down her face. He monitored my every move, questioned my friends, isolated me from my family. The prosecutor held up printouts of her text messages, highlighted passages visible from across the courtroom. Mrs. Ross, did you write this message to Mr. Sloan? He started to look like a ghost. Poor thing. Did you write this message? When the life insurance clears, I want us on a beach in 30 days? Nadine's composure cracked like ice under pressure. You don't understand the pressure I was under. The pressure of slowly murdering your husband. Objection. Sustained. When the prosecutor finished, Nadine stared across the courtroom at Calder. Her tears had dried, replaced by pure venom. You can't do this to me, she screamed, her voice echoing off the courtroom walls. I gave you the best years of my life. Calder met her eyes without flinching. You already did this to yourself. The jury deliberated for 40 minutes. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced her to life, without the possibility of parole, citing the premeditated nature of the crime and the abuse of trust between spouses. As the bailiff led her away in shackles, Nadine turned back one last time. I hope you're happy, she said. Calder said nothing. He learned that some people didn't deserve responses. The garage was busier than ever. Word had gotten around about what happened, and somehow that translated into more customers. People liked doing business with a man who'd survived his wife's attempt to murder him. It gave him a certain credibility, like he'd been tested and proven himself worthy. Stick had been promoted to partner, his name painted on the sign outside in letters as big as Calder's. He ran the day-to-day operations, while Calder focused on the complex rebuilds and custom work he enjoyed most. Boss, you got a customer wants to talk to you. Stick call from the front office. Mrs. Henderson stood at the counter, holding the keys to her Ford Explorer. The transmission Calder had rebuilt was still running perfectly after 8 months. Mr. Ross, I just wanted to thank you again, and to tell you how sorry I am about everything you went through. Just doing my job, Mrs. Henderson. Well, you did it better than anyone else could have. If you ever need a reference, you just let me know. Wyatt had taken the truth about his mother better than anyone expected. Children were resilient, their psychologist had said. They adapted to new realities faster than adults, that he spent his afternoons at the garage, organizing tools and learning about engines. Some nights, he had bad dreams about his mother, but they were getting less frequent. Time was helping, and so was the knowledge that his father had protected him. Dad, can I help with the Camaro? Wyatt asked, appearing at Calder's elbow with a shop rag in his hand. Sure, kiddo. Grab me the socket wrench. They worked together in comfortable silence, the kind of peace that comes from shared understanding. Wyatt knew his mother had tried to hurt his father. He didn't understand all the details, but he understood enough. Lana stopped by most evenings after a shift at the hospital. Not dating exactly, but something deeper than friendship. Something built on trust and shared experience, and the knowledge that some people were worth saving, while others weren't. How was your day? She asked, settling into the old couch where Wyatt used to watch Calder work. Good. Productive. Any word from the appeals court? Nothing new. Her lawyer's running out of options. Nadine's conviction was solid. The appeals court had upheld the verdict unanimously, and the state Supreme Court had refused to hear the case. She would die in prison, exactly where she belonged. You ever going to forgive her? Wyatt asked one Saturday afternoon. They were working on a 1969 Camaro, Wyatt holding a flashlight while Calder replaced the alternator. Calder set down his wrench and looked at his son. The boy was getting taller, his face losing the soft roundness of childhood. In a few years, he'd be a teenager, then a man. He deserved honest answers, not comfortable lies. No, Calder said, and that's how I stay free. What do you mean? Forgiveness is for people who are sorry. Your mother isn't sorry she tried to kill me. She's sorry she got caught. So you'll always hate her. Calder thought about that, choosing his words carefully. I don't hate her anymore, but I'll never forgive her. Some things you don't forgive. Some people you don't give second chances. Because she hurt you. Because she would have hurt you too. Eventually. Wyatt was quiet for a moment, processing this information with the serious consideration he brought to all important topics. I'm glad you figured it out. Me too, kiddo. The next day was Calder's 40th birthday. He came home from work to find Wyatt in the kitchen with a small wrapped box, the same size and shape that had started this whole nightmare a year ago. For a moment, Calder felt his chest tighten. His hands trembled slightly as memories flooded back: the GPS tracker, the poisoned cupcake, the betrayal that had nearly cost him everything. "It's okay," Wyatt said quietly, reading his father's expression. "I made it myself. At school." Calder took the box with steady hands. It was light, the size of his palm. The wrapping paper was crooked, held together with too much tape, and decorated with a child's careful attention to detail. "This one I'll open," he said. Inside was a keychain shaped like a motorcycle, made from metal shop glass. The edges were rough, filed by hand, but it was clearly crafted with care and love. A gift from a son to his father, untainted by hidden agendas or secret plans. "I know you don't have a motorcycle," Wyatt said, "but maybe someday." Calder clipped the keychain to his garage keys, where it would remind him every day that some gifts came from love, not malice. Maybe someday. Outside, the Texas sun was setting behind the oak trees in their backyard. The same trees Nadine used to sit under while planning his murder. The same backyard where Decker had installed the patio that started their affair. But it was different now. Clean. His Lana's car pulled into the driveway with the familiar sound of an engine that needed a tune-up. She got out carrying a bag of groceries and a bottle of wine, smiling at the sight of father and son in the kitchen. "Hey, birthday boy," she called through the screen door. "Ready for dinner?" "Almost," he called back. Calder Ross stood in his kitchen, holding his son's gift, watching a woman who cared about him carry groceries into his house. A year ago, he'd been dying by degrees, poisoned by someone who was supposed to love him more than anyone else in the world. Now he was free. Some prisons had walls and bars and armed guards. Others had wedding rings and shared bank accounts and the comfortable lies of domestic life. Others had tea that tasted wrong and cupcakes that never should have been eaten. He'd escaped his prison through vigilance and courage and the refusal to ignore warning signs. Not everyone was that lucky. Most people who found themselves in his situation died quietly, their murders disguised as natural deaths or tragic accidents. But Calder Ross wasn't most people. He was a man who paid attention, who trusted his instincts, who never forgot that evil often wore familiar faces and spoke in loving voices. He was a man who'd looked death in the face and lived to tell about it. He was free.